Hello, everybody. I'm Henrik Cronqvist, and I'm the Dean of the Argyros College of Business and Economics at Chapman University. And today we're really excited to be talking to Alan Peterson, who is class of 2018 here at Chapman, and who is working for American Healthcare REIT, and he is Vice President of Investor Relations and Finance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tori Nguyen. I'm the class of 2026 of the Argyros College of Business and Economics program. And today we're here with Alan Peterson. I'm so excited to start off with the first question and thank Alan for being here. But the first question is, what is the most significant piece of advice when it comes to finding a job after grad?
Thanks, Henrik, and thanks, Tori, for having me. In regards to, the best advice that I would have for new graduates is it starts early, right? And this industry, particularly the finance industry, I feel like, we've talked about it, but the recruiting cycle is starting a lot earlier these days. So make sure that if you do want to explore this industry as a potential career path and hit the job market, that you're starting early from your classroom interactions with your professors, and also your interactions with your peers. I think that that's what I found a lot more valuable during my time at Chapman, was just being able to immerse myself, whether it be in extracurricular activities through the fraternity I was involved in, as well as all of the campus clubs that were available to me through the Argyros School of Business back then, now Argyros College. And I think that those relationships, they go a long way because at the end of the day, business is a people kind of industry. And in that industry, you really need to make sure that you're creating relationships that just go beyond the classroom and go beyond, the Excel spreadsheets that a lot of these individuals could be working behind for a number of hours in any given day.
Very good. So, Alan, so you're working for a company called American Healthcare REIT. Okay, so for our real estate professionals that are listening, of course, they know what a REIT is, real estate investment trust. But maybe for the other audience that is not so familiar with this concept, can you tell us a little bit about what that is? How does that work?
Yeah, so in terms of a REIT, right? So a real estate investment trust, there's a lot of listed companies that are real estate investment trusts. Essentially, what a REIT is I would um, kind of translate it to it being a mutual fund for real estate properties, right? So the same way that Apple goes out and builds a product, the same way that Amazon is selling through their platform, is the same way that a real estate company essentially operates as well, right? They collect a rent check or they provide a service in terms of housing an individual. And that's really what a real estate investment trust allows investors to do, is have access to owning a piece of property, but they own it through a stock rather than through the actual physical plant, the physical building. So, it's a tax advantage company because we don't pay income tax, since you're paying property taxes and you're distributing a lot of your retained earnings through a dividend. But nonetheless, that's essentially, in a nutshell, what a REIT is a big amalgamation or a big portfolio of properties within an individual company.
That's really interesting to hear, especially it seems like a really concentrated industry. What would you say is the best way to climb and thrive at a company, especially with your background at Chapman or maybe your upbringing at home and where you grew up?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways is really trying to continue to be a student throughout your time in the professional experience, right? I know that that's one of the mottos that Chapman has, is being a lifelong learner and being a global citizen in that regard. But it very much translates to the professional world as well, right? You want to continue to learn, you want to continue to adapt, because I'll tell you that in my short career so far, I've gone through a global pandemic now in the workforce, and it felt like I was spending more time working from home than I was in an office space. Now, thankfully, I'm in an office space 5 days a week, but it was a transition that I think a lot of individuals just weren't exposed to, right? And you have to be able to adapt, learn on your feet, and be a little bit more nimble these days. And to that extent too, I think one of the biggest traits that I have found to my benefit and to the benefit of all of the peers that I've interacted with in the professional world is just intellectual curiosity, right? Making sure that you're asking questions, that you're always thriving to learn more about what you're doing or what your company's doing, as well as the industry. Because if you can stay on top of those new ideas and the new trends, I think that you're going to be ahead of the curve versus some of the competition that could be out there for, whatever business you might be a member of or partake in.
That makes sense. That's very good advice, Alan. So one question I have is part of your title is investor relations, and basically you're a finance guy, real estate guy. I think not too many students say when they set out after college, I'm going to go into IR, but you ended up there. So tell us about what is exciting about that, and even what does it mean?
Yeah, I would say I'll start a little bit higher level in terms of describing our REIT, right? So American Healthcare REIT, we're a diversified healthcare real estate investment trust. So we own properties within outpatient medical buildings, which is typically like if you're going to visit a doctor's office, you're more than likely using or stepping foot in an outpatient medical building, as well as we own a lot of long-term care facilities. So if you think of senior housing, whether it be independent living, assisted living, that's our company in a nutshell. And when you translate it to investor relations, Dean Cronquist, to your point, yeah, I did not imagine that investor relations was going to be in my career at any point in time when I was graduating Chapman. Really what gravitated it to me, and I think it starts with my time over at Green Street, which has been a big employer for Chapman students as well. At Green Street, I was covering companies. So in that role, what I was doing is going out, researching, valuing companies, providing recommendations, whether or not institutional investors or investors generally should be buying, selling, or holding the company. And from that, I interacted with a lot of investor relations personnel, and each individual public company, right, has their own IR teams, as we like to call them. And these IR individuals would help you help understand the story that they're trying to communicate to the marketplace. The opportunity came up to join a company that was quite new or was going to become new to the listed market here at American Healthcare REIT. And it felt like a natural transition, given the fact that I was communicating with investors on institutional investors over at Green Street. I still do a lot of the same things that I was doing at Green Street in my role today. But I know that, to kind of take it a step back as well, in terms of just high level, investor relations kind of spans the gambit. So I'm talking about it from a public company standpoint, which I think is a little bit more prevalent because people are able to understand given the transparency, given the public reporting dynamics. But investor relations can really span from whether it be a public company or a private company, fundraising, communicating with high net worth individuals, really trying to communicate an investment thesis of why they should be investing in that company. A lot of similarities in that regard, but you're dealing with different investor bases at any given time. And that's not to say that I'm dealing with those different investor bases here, but I think it provides a little bit of a differentiator between the two, whether you're working investor relations at a public company versus a private company.
Well, Alan, what we do know is that you're extremely qualified for what you do now. Switching gears a little bit, if there's one thing that Chapman students should do in their undergrad, what do you recommend? Clubs, fraternities, Greek life?
I think anything that you could list, Tori, about what Chapman has to offer, I think that they should dive right into it, right? The classroom is definitely an important element of their education and their time at Chapman. I very much value a lot of the relationships that I've built with my professors throughout their years, and they've even served me as great mentors, even in my professional life. So maintaining those relationships have been instrumental to, I think, my career path so far. And in regards to, again, I go back to just the relationship building. If you're building relationships outside of the classroom, I was part of the James Financial Residency Program. I was part of the Chapman University Investment Group, as well as a fraternity on campus. And all of those interactions with those individuals, I think it's tough to remember some of the stock pitches that people had in those club meetings and in those extracurriculars. But what you do remember is you remember the interactions you had with one another. And I think those interactions go a long way, right? Because your career is a long one. I think that that's some of the best advice I've gotten as well, is that your career will, if you have a good one, right, you're going to be looking at anywhere from 30 to 35 years after you graduate, at least. And in that regard, you want to make sure that those relationships can help propel you, or open up new opportunities down the line as well. So it's how I got my opportunity at Green Street, was a lot of the networking that I had done while I was still a student, and continuing that networking process and building those relationships early on, I think provide you a pretty good foundation into the foreseeable future and as you step into the professional world.
Definitely, the networking aspect so important already in college. So let's talk a little bit more about real estate. So because that has been your industry, you were previously with Green Street, a huge player in the market when it comes to data and analytics in that space, and now you're with a REIT. So, and Chapman, we're very well known for real estate education. So, what is the case that can be made for students that want to go into finance and investment for the real estate side? Some students may want to work for a mutual fund or a hedge fund, and they have different kind of assets, stocks and bonds. What do you think is particularly exciting about real estate from an investment perspective?
Yeah, I think in terms, so I did not plan on being in real estate, right? One of the things that I really enjoyed was I enjoyed public markets because it felt like you always had your report card every single day, right? You knew whether you were right or wrong, and the market would tell you if you were. So that was one of the big dynamics, and that's why I think I like the public markets a lot more. I kind of fell into real estate, obviously looking for a job covering companies, and Green Street provided me that opportunity. I think if you I've grown to very much appreciate real estate, and will probably be staying in this industry for the foreseeable future. I don't see a transition anywhere in the near future, or even in the longer future now outside of the real estate industry. And really, I know that a lot of people say, okay, real estate's easy to understand, right? You could feel it, you could touch it, there's a tangible asset. But at the end of the day, I think that real estate is also a reflection of the broader economy and what's going on there, because your changes and your kind of taste and preferences will always evolve over time as new technologies come to the fray. And I think that real estate is going to be a foundation for us to store a lot of those new technologies, whether you view it through, call it the data center REITs that are out there that are quite large today. Also, if you think about cell towers are all packaged in a REIT. So if you're talking on your phone, you're utilizing real estate in some capacity, whether you can actually see it or touch it, right? So, and then from there on out too, I mean, I just think back to COVID as well. There's a lot of people that are very reluctant to go back into the office because we found it that we could adapt in a more virtual or remote world. And some of the struggles that some office landlords are dealing with these days, I think, is a reflection of how the economy has evolved and how the world and society has evolved. So those are those are really the elements that I really enjoy, because I think real estate, not to dumb it down, but it does feel like it's a little bit easier to understand and comprehend. And as long as you're at that kind of the forefront of analyzing those trends, I think that you can make a pretty successful career out of being in the real estate industry.
Absolutely. And so many of our alumni, they have been very successful in real estate, and you're on a good pathway, Alan. So we really appreciate the time with you today. Thank you so much for talking to us. We have been talking today to Alan Peterson, class of 2018, who is working for American Healthcare REIT. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.